Hello, hello, hello. We will have a first, a very, 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 very good program today. Welcome, everybody. Dear friends, we will be with Sal Rachele. And before we start, we have a small announcement in Spanish with Marta.
Hola, hola querida familia de Galactic School, bienvenidos también del canal Conciencia Cósmica. Les compartimos que esta entrevista que será en inglés pronto también estará traducida al español para que estén pendientes. Gracias. That's it.
And you can put your Ashken's progress in Spanish and Noe in English or English, and Noe will translate them. Pueden poner sus preguntas en español o en inglés y Noemí nos va a traducir. Y bueno, pues Sal, gracias por tu tiempo. Thank you for your time and thank you for all.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you to you. And I know you are traveling. Everybody's asking who is Sal Rachele. This is the first time we do the program for South America. So for us, it's a big premiere. So I'm going to read a little bit about you. In the mid-1970s, Sal Rachele became interested in developing his psychic and intuitive abilities and took silver mind control. Sal later developed his own unique method called alpha theta programming, designed to reprogram the subconscious mind and unlock the creative potential within. In 1994, he published his first book, Life on the Cutting Edge, a self-help manual with extensive illustration diagrams and charts. And there is some more. Then Sal became aware of his connection to Leah, a sixth density Venusian, that's from Venus, the Arcturians, a collective consciousness from seventh density, Arcturus, or 7D, and the founders, 12-dimensional beings. The books, I personally read them all, so they are in English. You can find them in Amazon and in Kindle. Life on the Cutting Edge, Earth Change and Beyond, Earth Awakens, Soul Integration, The Real History of Earth, The Mystery of Time, and The Secrets of Unlimited Energy. They are all incredible books. And soon in Spanish, this is the good news, dear friends. And as well, Sal Rachele is also the founder of Timeline Healing, a powerful therapy that is taught worldwide. And that's for sure, because here you have the website, www.salrachele.com, and you can see all the countries where Sal is going, Russia, Bulgaria, Romania, and many, many countries in Eastern Europe and all around the world. And the contact is S. Rachele, with an E, 2004, @yahoo.com. I will put the contact later on, and that's it for the presentation. So welcome, Sal. And
it's a pleasure again to be here. Thank you for having me. And do we want to start with a particular topic?
Yes. The topic was very large because it was about galactic history, ascension, and what do I do in between all that, or inside of all this transformation or transmutation, as you like to say. Let's start with maybe the general view. Galactic history, is that true? This is an ascension process. We are through an ascension process right now. What's your view?
Okay, so let's we'll do a very, very quick history, very quick, because we really want to focus on the next 10, 20, or 30 years on planet Earth, what to expect if you are on a path of ascension. And we're going to use the term ascension very loosely here to mean raising of consciousness. There are more specific terms we could use involving what's called building the crystal light body and how to move into a state of immortality while you're still in a physical body and things like that. But we're going to basically start with how to raise your consciousness so that you can free yourself from what has been popularly termed the matrix. The matrix is nothing more than the beliefs and structure of society. So things like death and taxes are part of the matrix. So how to free ourselves from the matrix so that we can ascend in consciousness and remember who we really are. Because we are powerful, creative, spiritual beings. So that's a little bit of an overview. Let's go into the history just a tiny bit as it applies to what we're going to talk about next. So first of all, we hope everybody listening is aware that we did not evolve from the chimpanzee or the ape or primates or anything like that. That's a pretty ridiculous idea when you really go into it. A kindergartner can figure out that something's wrong with that theory, because when a species mutates, eventually all the members of that species mutate or they die off. So then why do we still have apes and chimpanzees and monkeys on the earth today if we mutated from their species? It makes no sense, even to a kindergartner. The truth is, we are spiritual beings, and these bodies, which we're calling Homo sapiens, are vehicles that allow us to experience this dimension. They were engineered by some of my spirit guides called the founders, in collaboration with other beings that are often called creator gods. Now, there's one Godhead, one source, one all-encompassing force, which we call God. And the founders are 12-dimensional beings that are about as close to God as you can possibly be without being the source itself. So there's two aspects of God. There's the source and there's everything in creation. And everything in creation is God, just as the source is God. And we are one with God because we are one with everything in creation. That's on a higher level, of course. But getting back to the history, about 100 million years ago, a group of beings from the Pleiades started colonizing the earth, and the human DNA, which we call Homo sapiens, was engineered by the founders, the creator gods, and these modern forms that we're inhabiting now are the product of their genetic engineering. I know it sounds like a food or something. Oh, these have genetically engineered ingredients. Yep, we are genetically engineered ingredients at the human level. And I know that may not sound so great. Kind of makes us sound like lab rats. But, and there is some truth to that. You know, we are the product of experimentation at the human level. Now, actually, the humanoid form began almost 1 billion years ago in what we call the Lyra Vega star system. And then later, many of those Lyra Vegans migrated to the Pleiades, where the Homo sapiens experiment began. Now, for about 90 million years, there were only scattered colonies of Homo sapiens on the earth. It wasn't until about 10 million years ago that the first real civilization got started on Earth, and it was called Pangaea or Pangea or the land of Pan, different names for it. And this was the original civilization during the time where there was basically one continent before the continental drift began. And this is where many of our legends come from, including mermaids, fairies, centaurs, all of the different species which were allowed to interbreed back then. So, for example, a man and a horse could breed and become a centaur, or a half man, half horse. And, the human and the fish becoming the mermaid and this sort of thing. So these legends are based on actual experimentation that took place with DNA, where humans were allowed to interbreed with other species. There were a lot of problems with that, and so eventually it was no longer allowed by the founders, the creator gods, and so the ability to interbreed with other species was taken away, you could say, because it was in our own best interests not to interbreed with other species. So it was an experiment. It wasn't right or wrong, good or bad, just an experiment. And then later we had some other civilizations. There was during the Great Flood, where the continents separated, the inhabitants of Pangaea went to other places. Either they perished and then reincarnated in other places, or they were lifted off in spaceships, depending on the situation, how evolved they were, whether they were in contact with extraterrestrials and things like that. And then later on, we had Lemuria. This was around 150,000 years ago. And Lemuria had two periods. And then we had Atlantis, and Atlantis also had two periods. You can read about the destruction of Lemuria and Atlantis in my books. I'm not going to take time to go into that now. And then later we had Egypt and Sumeria and a few other places around the world. Of course, in between all of these major civilizations, there were minor ones existing as the indigenous tribes of Australia, North America, South America, Siberia, and other places, Africa. And so there were humanoid forms on the earth in between Atlantis and Lemuria. It wasn't like everybody got wiped out, but the major civilizations got wiped out. And so now our modern civilization, we're saying, is about 12,000 years old, right after the last ice age. You can also read about what happened there. And many of you are familiar with the concept of archons or Nephilim or Anunnaki or other races which came in within the last 12,000 years and greatly influenced our society. We have been manipulated or had direct involvement with 23 different extraterrestrial races. Now, there's been over 100 that have visited the Earth, but only 23 have directly interacted with humanity. So let's just pause for a moment and take a couple deep breaths. Some of you are maybe getting overwhelmed with the information, so we're going to slow down just a little bit here.
No, it's very clear. Did I understand correctly? 23 galactic races?
23 different galactic races have had direct involvement with humanity over the last 10 million years.
10 million years. That's a lot.
Yeah, since the original Pleiadian DNA, which was our root race, is from Pleiades. And then the root race of Pleiadians came to Earth 100 million years ago, but around 10 million years ago, first civilization. And there's been about 23 different ET groups that have interacted over the last 10 million years.
That's a lot.
And we're going to talk about a few of them just real briefly because they're significant to what's happening now on the Earth. And we'll start with the negative ones. We could just as easily start with the positive ones, but why don't we get the negative out of the way first? We have negative beings from Orion, Dracos, and Sirius, which have interacted with the Earth during the past 10 million years. And when we say negative, we mean teachings and energy and consciousness that tends to hinder or obstruct our natural soul evolution. So that would be about 80% of the Orions, about 90% of the Dracos, and about 50% of the Syrians are of a negative persuasion, or as one group calls it, service to self mentality, where they're more concerned about their well-being than they are about the well-being of humanity. They have agendas, often hidden agendas, for why they want to be interacting with human beings. In some cases, it's that good old-fashioned control. They want to be in control. They're intoxicated by the idea of power. They have a lust for power and control. And so many of them have learned how to travel through the astral planes. And from the astral planes, they've learned how to possess many of the world leaders on Earth. According to my guides, about 60% of all the so-called leaders on Earth are possessed by negative astral entities. That's a large percentage. And you can see this in their behaviors. Oftentimes, their behaviors make no rational sense. And this is because of the lust for power that many of these beings have, that they want to live vicariously through the so-called leaders. I always say so-called leaders because what I see is that the so-called power elite, or dark cabal, or dark Illuminati, or dark forces, or dark extraterrestrials, or the deep state, or the banking cartel, or the secret society, Illuminati pyramid, whatever word you want to use to describe them, they do not have true power. They have false power. Well, ultimately, we all have true power, but they're not in touch with their true power. Ask yourself a basic question. Why would I need to control another human being if I have the power and presence of God within me? All power, all wisdom, enlightenment within me, the kingdom of heaven is within. Why would I need to control anyone? I wouldn't. I would have no reason to control another human being or any other species. So it's false power that leads to these control freaks. We know who they are. We can rattle off the acronyms. We think you all know who we're talking about, World Economic Forum and all the rest of them. You know, that's just one example. And they want to control humanity because they are lacking awareness of their true power. And so they have this false power that comes from controlling people with militaries or through the monetary system, through religion, through the media, through medicine, through all of these different vehicles that are designed to brainwash humanity or mind control humanity. So that's the dark side. We're not going to spend much more time on the dark side because this event is about ascension. It's about raising our vibration beyond the vibration of the so-called dark side. Ultimately, there is no dark side. Everything is God. Everything is God's loving light manifest in different forms. So ultimately, negativity and darkness are illusions. But in this world, they seem real, so that's why we decided to take a few minutes to talk about them. So let's move on to the main topic, which is Ascension. There's more to the galactic history. Obviously, you can read about some of that in the second and third and fifth books, especially. That would be Earth Changes and Beyond, Earth Awakens, and the Real History of Earth. And then, of course, Soul Integration was the fourth book I wrote, which is a very essential self-help manual on how to integrate the parts of your soul. And I bring that up because that is actually the next step in the process of ascension for souls on earth, is to integrate the various levels and aspects of consciousness. What do we mean by that? When you have 6 lower bodies, this is defined in the soul integration material. The 6 lower bodies are the physical, emotional, and mental, often called the gross bodies, and the subtle bodies, 4, 5, and 6. This is the astral, etheric, and causal bodies. So you have the 3 subtle bodies and the 3 gross bodies for a total of 6 lower bodies. And these are the levels that can go out of balance. Now, there's 6 higher levels, which are talked about also in the soul integration work. We're not going to spend a lot of time on the 6 higher bodies today. We simply don't have time for that. So we're going to talk about how do we balance these 6 lower bodies? Because when they are in balance, the soul, which is level 7, can communicate effortlessly with your various levels of consciousness. It's like opening the chambers of a padlock, and now the higher energies can stream into the lower self, because all 6 aspects of the lower self are aligned. They're all working together, they're all aware of each other, and they're going to, excuse me just a moment here. So, how do we make these bodies work together? That's the topic of a weekend workshop that I lead in various places, and it's the topic of the book, Soul Integration. So, we're going to give you the short version, very quick version on soul integration. So, the physical body is primarily concerned with physical well-being. That would make sense, of course. And there's nothing wrong with taking good care of your physical body, the temple of God, as it's often called. A Course in Miracles calls it an illusion, but at this level, it's a very necessary illusion for experiencing these illusory worlds, the worlds of Maya or duality. But we're here in these worlds of duality, so we might as well have a high-functioning physical body. And we know how to take care of the physical body. We don't always do it, but we know how to take care of it. We know about giving it high-quality food and water, right kind of exercise, and being careful with the environment so that we're not putting all kinds of dangerous chemicals on our skin and things like that, natural cosmetics and so on. We're not going to spend much time with diet and nutrition and natural cosmetics. You can find that information in various places. That's not our concern. But our concern is to have a positive attitude about these amazing, miraculous physical forms with 50 trillion cells all working together to give us an experience of these dimensions. The emotional body is far more likely to cause problems than the physical body. It will cause problems in the physical body if you have a lot of unresolved negative emotions. This is the whole purpose of psychology, really, to go in and heal emotional traumas that have occurred in our past. And in fact, I have a technique called timeline healing, which sort of takes psychotherapy as a base and then expands upon it in different ways. For example, it heals problems in all 6 lower bodies. And it also works with past lifetimes as well as this lifetime. So it goes far beyond traditional psychotherapy. And this is something you can find out more about. There's some of it in the book, The Mystery of Time, but you can also sign up for various timeline healings occurring in different places around the world. So timeline healing is a powerful way of addressing the traumas that our emotional bodies have gone through, whether it's getting beaten by our parents when we're little, physically abused, sexually abused, verbally abused, whether it's loss of loved ones when we were little, or being picked on constantly by a big brother or big sister, having parents that are fighting in the other room constantly when we're growing up. Almost everyone has some emotional trauma. It's 99.999% of humanity has had some emotional traumas. And of course, you had them in past lives if you didn't have them in this life. And then there's the mental level. These are the core negative beliefs. The most popular core negative belief on earth is, I'm not good enough. And you can see the results of this with this constant stress that people are under. Oh, I have to achieve, achieve, achieve. I need more, more, more. Look at the billionaires. They need more, more, more. It's never enough. 20 billion, 30 billion, 100 billion. They still need more because they have this deep-seated core negative belief, I'm not good enough. And they believe their happiness comes from outside of themselves, which is one of the outcomes of these core negative beliefs. Of course, I'm not worthy. Something is wrong with me. I'm not safe. The world is not safe. There's not enough. And you can put in the blank. There's not enough time. There's not enough money. There's not enough energy. There's not enough love. There's not enough talent and ability. Whatever there's not enough of, that's a core negative belief that keeps us stuck in the lower levels of vibration. So we have techniques such as timeline healing for healing these core negative beliefs. And that brings us to the astral body. We live in an astral soup. It's mostly what I call a negative psychic soup. It's like when you're traveling in an airplane at 35,000 feet, let's say 10,000 meters, and you're looking down, and you see a brown blanket of smog around the cities from up there. Well, this is a blanket of psychic smog. It's the negative thought forms of people floating around in the astral realms. And we're all subject to it unless we learn how to clean our astral bodies, protect our astral bodies, and put positive vibrations into our astral bodies. And then you have the etheric body, which is the aura, the chakras, the meridians. It's the electromagnetic body. And this body is at a higher vibration than the astral body, but it too can become fouled with negativity from traumatic events that have occurred in our life or in past lives. We carry what are called etheric imprints. For an example would be you died violently in a past life. Maybe you were stabbed through the heart. In this lifetime, you have heart problems. Or you were hanged by the neck. In this lifetime, you have throat problems. So these are what we call etheric imprints. They could be called engrams in some teachings. And so in timeline healing and other techniques, we go back into the past and heal the etheric imprints that occurred in our etheric bodies. And then we have the causal body, which is the realm of karma, karmic agreements, soul contracts, the Akashic records, and a few other things, the Merkaba, vehicle of light. All of this pertains to level 6 of our being, which is the causal body. And so we need to go back and heal our karmic contracts. Some of them we came into this lifetime carrying from past lives. Some we have formed in this life. And forgiveness is the magic formula for healing karmic contracts. True forgiveness, not just pardon. Pardon is a watered down version. I could say I loaned money to someone and they didn't pay me back. I could say, well, you know what? I'm going to pardon you. You don't have to pay me back. It's okay. But deep inside, maybe I haven't really forgiven the person. Maybe I'm angry that they didn't pay me back. So true forgiveness goes deeper than pardon. And so I need to forgive that person. And the way to forgive is to recognize that we are all God's children, doing the best we know how to do at the level of consciousness we're at. And yes, there are some beings we could call evil, but for the most part, even the evil ones must be forgiven. That's hard to do. The word evil, as I use it, is very different than the way it is typically defined. I use evil to mean a state of consciousness whereby you believe that some souls are more deserving of God's love than other souls. That's an unusual definition of evil, but when you think about it, that really is the cause of all the problems right there. The belief in separation from God, which leads to the belief that some souls are God's chosen people and some are not. And it doesn't matter which religion or ethnic group you're talking about, this goes through all of them to some degree, this idea of being holier than others or more deserving of God's love than others. And others are looked upon as less than, the heathen, the unwashed masses, whatever term, the little people, whatever term is used to describe them. So that's my definition of evil. So we overcome all of that, and we use various techniques, which I've described, and then we line up these 6 lower bodies. They're all working together to give us an experience of higher dimensions. Now that we've aligned them, we can step into level 7, which is our soul. And our soul is the beginning of what I call the higher self. So now we have this beautiful aspect, which we call the soul, which reincarnates over and over until it's learned all of the lessons it desires to learn about the 6 lower worlds or 6 lower levels. So karma is misunderstood by most souls on earth. Let's use an example of how it is misunderstood. So you have a rich person living in a palace, and every night he's stuffing his face full of fine foods while peasants are starving outside the palace walls. So in the next lifetime, he comes back as one of the starving peasants outside the palace walls. Is he being punished? Wrong answer. No, he's not being punished. There's no angry, judgmental God sitting up on a cloud, a white-bearded man, of course, white male, supreme leader, all that kind of stuff. No, of course not. What's happening is the soul wants to experience all of the aspects of duality. And so the soul is saying, I experienced being a greedy, selfish, rich, royal person stuffing my face. Now I want to see what it's like to be a starving peasant outside the palace walls. I want to have both sides of the duality experience. And so that's why souls will come back as the opposite polarity in order to really get the full experience of polarity. Now, once souls reach a certain level of consciousness, that may no longer be the case. They may say, I've experienced enough duality. I'm ready to transcend duality and go into the higher states now. But human beings need me. They're desperately calling out for help. So I'm going to be one of the teachers of humanity. I'm going to incarnate into a human form, and I'm going to go down to earth, and I'm going to be a part of this earth and go through the realms of duality, but without getting attached to them. At least that's the plan. Unfortunately, about 70% of the light workers have gotten trapped in the realms of duality. They came here to free humanity from the realms of duality and got trapped themselves. So only about 30% of the souls who've come here to help have remembered their mission so far. I mean, others will probably eventually get more memories of why they came here and will start freeing themselves from the matrix. So we're covering a lot of territory. My guides and I have said that we're only going to spend maybe 50 to 55 minutes in this presentation. So we're going to try and cover as much as we can in that amount of time. So let's talk briefly about transcending duality, about transcending the matrix. And one of the principles of that is neutrality. Now, we know how hard that is for most of us on Earth to be neutral. For example, unless you've been living on another planet, you might be aware that in the United States, there's an election coming up. Perhaps you've heard about it over and over and over again. And it seems almost everyone is strongly polarized. They're either worshiping one of the candidates or they absolutely hate that candidate. And so this is an example of being polarized. Now, it doesn't mean we excuse bad behavior. If one of the candidates is behaving badly, or both of them, or all of them, we can call them out on that and just say, well, that's bad behavior. I don't condone that bad behavior. I'm not going to support that bad behavior. But we see the souls as beautiful children of God. No matter how badly they behave, they are God's beloved children. And so we need to see them in that way and basically treat them with love and kindness and compassion. What happens when you send hatred to a politician? They are much more likely to do hateful things. And again, it doesn't mean you agree with their decisions. Some of their behavior might be atrocious, awful, but they need love. And the more likely they are to respond to love and therefore behave in a better way because they're receiving lots of love vibrations. We know this is not easy to do. Some of us may be very angry at the politicians, or some other group, medical doctors who think they know everything and then, do bad things, or priests that are, pedophiles or, molesting little children or whatever it is. So we do need to be neutral, and that means we send love to everyone. And we attempt to understand both sides of the duality, the rich man and the poor man who's starving outside the palace, to come to an understanding of that aspect of polarity, the haves and the have-nots, completely unnecessary. In the higher realms, there's no such thing as haves and have-nots. Everyone is aware of the kingdom within in the higher realms. And they're living from their internal abundance. And so they're not trying to take things from others or oppress others or make rules that benefit them at the expense of other groups or things like that. So this is a lot. Like I said, we're covering a lot of material here in a very short period of time. I would like to pause and see if there are any questions that we can address in the short amount of time we have together.
Sure, Sal. It's perfectly clear. I mean, in such a period of time, it's clear. I want to tell you, you have, dear Sal's, greetings from Colombia, Uruguay, Madrid. Thank you, Mexico. Thank you, Rosario, Yucatan. And this I want to read to you. So, Hem, is it so amazing to have Sal Rachele today with us. Thank you for doing this for us, Marta, Kari, and Noemi. Yeah, because some of us, we read your book in English, we tried to, but to have you is such an honor. Here's Uruguay, Miguel Angel. I think this is Italy. And there is some questions. Let's go to maybe Ascension.
Yes, let's talk a little more about Ascension.
Yeah, Ascension and self-empowerment, and that will answer most of the question, because then it's specific. And for the time we have, maybe let's go straight. What can I do?
Yeah.
And
what can you do? What can we do to raise our vibration? Let's answer that question. That's probably the most practical question we can ask. What can we do to raise our vibration? We talked about neutrality. We want to not take sides in the duality. We want to send love to both sides in the so-called dualities, instead of being tempted to say one side's good, the other side's bad. Well, in reality, there's probably some good and bad in both sides. But so the neutrality was one point, but there's many other things we can do to raise our vibration. And probably number one is to spend time with high vibrational souls. That's really the purpose of events like this, is to come together and share insights, and without being elitist or better than anyone else. It's pretty obvious that those of us who are part of this program in general have a higher vibration than the average of humanity. That's just the reality of the situation. Doesn't make us superior or better than, but we do have a higher vibration, because we're working on ourselves, because we're focused on ascension. So therefore, coming together in like-minded groups, having a teacher, a wise sage or guru that's truly a true teacher, that's not just in it for money or fame or to control people, but a true teacher that is more concerned with your evolution than whether or not they attract this number of people to their events or whatever. And that eventually make themselves unnecessary. They train their students so well, their students become the teachers and they are no longer needed. Those are the true teachers. So spending time with high vibrational teachers, and you can find them online, there's lots of them. Use discernment. If they are judgmental and putting down one group of people or another, they're not a high teacher. They are, if they're radiating love and you feel expanded and more enlightened after spending time with them, then they're a valid teacher. So that's number one. Number two is meditation. And there are many forms of meditation, but meditation is about becoming aware of your consciousness and quieting your mind, letting go of the constant busy all day long, and going within to the center of being. And there are various forms of meditation. Vipassana, where you sit in a lotus posture. There's Tai Chi, Qigong, various sacred movements that are forms of meditation. The number three is conscious breathing. And some of you may know that I was in the rebirthing movement for many years, and we were doing a lot of conscious breathing. And there's other forms besides rebirthing. There's Kriya Yoga, Kundalini Yoga. There's breath of fire, primal breath, holotropic breath work. There's many different types of breathing techniques that you can use. And so I strongly recommend combining breathing with meditation. One common one is to count from 1 to 4 on the inhale, and then you count from 1 to 4 on the exhale. And so these are some of the things you can do to quiet your mind, where you combine meditation and breathing. We already mentioned yoga briefly. Various yoga practices can also help raise your vibration. Eating a healthy diet is important for raising your vibration. Getting out into nature, listening to high vibrational music, contacting your spirit guides. These are just a few of, in the book Soul Integration, there's a list of over 40 ways to raise your vibration. Some of them are a little more detail oriented. I mentioned natural cosmetics instead of synthetic, things like that. There's just a lot of different little things you can do. Become aware of your circadian rhythms. These are your cycles, your natural cycles. When you're up, when you're down, best time to sleep, best time to be awake, those kinds of things as well. So there's a lot of various things that you can do to raise your vibration. Okay, so let's talk about levels of vibration just for a moment. There are 3 primary levels of vibration on Earth, what I call 3rd, 4th, and 5th density consciousness. 3rd density consciousness is about 70 to 75% of humanity, and this is basically the animalistic state of consciousness. People in 3rd density are primarily concerned with procreation, survival, and competition for perceived scarce resources. That describes about 70 to 75% of humanity. People in 3rd density consciousness do not have free will. They have what I would call imprisoned will, because they are slaves to their belief systems. Think about a fundamentalist Christian or a fundamentalist Muslim or some other religion. They're not open to Hinduism or Buddhism or anything else. They are locked into their fundamentalist religion, and they may even think that people who belong to different religions are worshiping the devil, or they're evil, or they're bad people, or whatever. So that's an example of 3rd density consciousness. 4th density is the realm of free will. This is where you break out of your core negative beliefs and you begin to think for yourself. You become an individual. You're no longer following the crowd. You're not a sheep following the sheep off the edge of the cliff. You are an independent thinker. And you learn that your thoughts are powerful and that your state of consciousness determines your experience of reality. So this is where you get serious about raising your vibration and using positive affirmations and such. And then level 5 is what I call God's will. And souls at level 5 have merged their free will with God's will, which is a more free state than just 4th density free will. This is another misunderstanding. People think, oh, if I give everything over to God, then I no longer have any freedom. I just have to do whatever God tells me to do. But in reality, you're more free when you're at a level of God consciousness than when you're at a level of human consciousness, free will. So these are the 3 levels. About 20 to 25% of humanity is in 4th density consciousness, and about 0.3% of humanity is in 5th density consciousness. And then there's a tiny, tiny percent in level 6 and 7 and so on. But these are the 3 parallel Earths, as I've called them in past channelings. So most of you listening to this call are in the upper 4th density range, and maybe some of you are in the lower 5th density range in consciousness. And so we've talked about how you raise your vibration to these higher levels. And now we've talked about what are some of the things you can experience at these higher levels. And when you're at level 5, you have a total knowledge that God is within, that God is underlying everything in your human life. You may not manifest it 100% in the world all the time, but you have this deep inner knowing that God is in charge when you're at a level 5 or higher state of consciousness. And so, the expression trust God, that's certainly part of it. Remembering who you really are, of course, is the biggest part. We are powerful, creative, spiritual beings. And that's the affirmation that I would give everyone today, to ask yourself or say to yourself many times over and over, I am a powerful, creative, spiritual being. That's our mantra. And it's always true, 100% true all the time, no exceptions. As I said earlier, if you think you're powerless, you're going to experience being powerless because you're powerful. And whatever you believe, you will experience in this dimension. It doesn't mean that you're inherently powerless. It just means you'll have an experience of being powerless because of the power of your belief. So creative is the other part of that statement. Yeah, we're all creative. We're creating all the time. Some of us don't like what we're creating, and we haven't figured out how to create differently. That's part of the reason we have events like this. Part of the reason I do techniques like timeline healing and soul integration is to help you make better choices. If you feel like, well, I've kind of screwed up my life, this isn't working, that isn't working. Well, yeah, this is where we change our consciousness. Michael Jackson said, I'm going to start with the man in the mirror. This has been central teaching throughout history, that it starts within. Socrates had a two-word teaching, know thyself. So it's like, start with the basics. The basics are know thyself, discover for yourself that you are one with your Creator, that the Creator lives within us, that the kingdom of heaven is within. And it feels like this is a good place to stop. So unless there's any very quick questions, we're going to stop here.
Yes, Sal. I will go to the last one. In English will be, Dear Sal, please, would you have any message for us, South America?
Well, I'm living in Mexico and near Lake Chapala, which is south of Guadalajara. I'm in the process of learning Spanish. My feeling is that Mexico is one of the best countries to be in during this phase of the earth changes, which is a whole nother topic. We didn't have time to really get into the earth changes too much in this presentation. Other parts of Central America also could be quite a good place to be during this time. Nicaragua, there's some people moving to Nicaragua, Panama, El Salvador, Costa Rica, although Costa Rica has gotten very expensive. But if you can live there inexpensively, it's a good place as well. Parts of Ecuador, although they're having political problems right now. And maybe Uruguay and a few other places. But generally speaking, the Latin countries are good places to be. There are exceptions, of course. You don't want to be in the big cities of Venezuela or the big cities of Brazil, probably. But most of Central and South America is a good place to live during this time. It has been a pleasure and a delight presenting this information. You can find out more at the website or by ordering the books, of course. And I want to thank everyone who's brought me on.
Thank you to you. Please, everybody take notes. www.salrachele, with an E at the end, Rachele in Spanish, .com. There is a lot of information. All the books are in Amazon. Remember, Sal has at least 7 books, and soon in Spanish. And here the Yahoo, S for Sal, S Rachele, in Spanish Rachele, 2004@yahoo.com. Is there something else you want to add there, Sal? Something you want to?
Well, just in closing, the most important thing you can do is work on yourself, heal your subconscious mind, heal your core emotional issues and negative beliefs, and make a commitment to growing and evolving into your true self, your higher levels of being. So, namaste to all. Many blessings. Thank you.
Thank you for all the information. It's very important and wonderful, and leave us with homework to investigate more about our own process and spiritual evolution. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you to everybody on the other side of the screen. Actually, there is no side, really. And everybody saying thank you, and it's an honor. And Gracias. Namaste.
Gracias.
Namaste. Thank you so much.
Take care. See you.
Gracias, gracias.